Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear students, and I'm with you here with the second lecture on what is pedagogy, and I hope you have gone through the article included in the book, and you have also noted your own points. And so there is a knowledge, there is a base, I suppose, in your mind on the basis of which this lecture, I hope, uh, can contribute in enhancing your understanding about what is pedagogy and what has been done in the area of pedagogy. So let's start. The points that I am going to discuss here are 8 points. The eighth point is missing here in this slide, but I'm going to tell you so you can write it down. Number one is introduction. The second point is the nature of education. Third point is pedagogues and teachers in ancient Greek society. The growing focus on teaching. The re-emergence of pedagogy. Pedagogy as accompanying, caring for, and bringing learning to life. Concluding remarks. The eighth point is what do we mean by pedagogy in this course especially. So let's start, dear students. Number one is introduction. Here we need to think distinct or differentiate between traditional thinking versus better concept of pedagogy. What is traditional thinking? As you can see, is art, science, and craft of teaching or related activities. Art is related to creativity. Science, of course, it has its own principles and laws, and craft is a kind of is a skill actually that you learn through education and through practice. So this is the traditional thinking about the concept of pedagogy. But what is the better thinking that I personally promote and I personally say it should be in the minds of the teachers and the educationists is, and I'm borrowing these three elements from this article, accompanying learners. We will talk about these 3 points at the end of almost at the end of the lecture. Number two is care for and about the learners. Number three, bringing learning into their life. So you can feel that these 3 points are instinctively different from art, science, and craft of teaching or related activities. So with this introduction, we can move on to the next point in the article, the nature of education. We need to think about the education versus schooling. Usually we think when we perceive education, the first thing, perhaps the last thing, or the only thing that comes in our mind is the school or institution, education institution, schools, colleges, and universities, or seminaries, madrasas, etc. The schooling concept is based on banking, means the making deposit of knowledge in the minds of the students. This is very important. This is very important point that you should keep in your mind because we are going to relate it afterwards. Banking means in the banks what we do, we deposit of money in the banks so they are preserved. And here the concept of schooling is mostly restricted to depositing the knowledge information in the brains of the students, drilling drill learning into people according to some plan often drawn by others. This is another aspect of schooling, that we have set curricula, we have set outlines, we have set textbooks, and the teachers and the educationists, they are supposed to inculcate this knowledge, this information, this curriculum, or this outline or textbook in the brains of the students. In the schooling, treating learners like objects, as if you are correcting something, if you are changing something. So these living brains, the kids, or the youngsters or the university students as if they are students and the teachers are acting upon their brains or upon them. So this is very limited concept of schooling. The direction is totally different. If we think little deeply, we will find that the schooling is this one. Whereas education, the concept of education is broader, of course. It's not acting upon the subjects, the students. It is acting with the students or people rather on them, and a lot of difference between acting on or acting with. We work with someone, that means we have a different perception of these people. The teachers, they can also learn from them. The possibility is that they can adapt their strategies according to the mindset of the culture of the student. An opposite is the working on them, is that they are just things, they are just non-living things, and the teachers are acting upon them. The process of inviting truth and possibility. Education is a process of inviting truth or investigating truth and possibility. The education based on respect for others and for truth. It is not that we respect everyone in the education. The base is that the respect for the human being on the basis they are humans. And but we, the teachers and the students and the researchers, they are all striving for the truth. And wherever the truth is, regardless of the personalities, regardless of the name, the truth is spoken, the truth is highlighted. Education is born out of hope and desire that all may share in life and be more. This point is very important. Actually, education makes the is important in with the process that create a sense of belongingness to other, and the sense of sharing your knowledge, your experience, and what you have in your mind, whatever ideas you have with others, with your human beings, with your friends, with your family, with your. So it's just helping others grow. It's helping other develop, because when you help others develop, actually, as a teacher or as a student or as a friend, you also grow, in that process. Education is engaging fully with the gifts people have been given. uh, we all know that the everyone is different from others in their abilities, in their talents, in their ideas. So the gifts are peculiar, the gifts are specific. My gifts maybe are specific to me, and there are other gifts, like the gift of creativity, the gift of imagination, the gift of memory, the gift of vision, the gift of solving problems, and so on and so forth. So it is that the education engages all the gifts given to each individual in the society or in the educational institution. Education is a matter of head, which is brain, heart here, and hand means the whole body. It's not just hand; it is the whole body. But the body is very, very effectively reflected through hands, because when we work, when we do something, the manual work, the hands are mostly involved. But it doesn't mean hands alone, but the head, body, the whole body, and the heart. Education is a means of connection to community. It's very important, to the natural world and to the spiritual values. There are three things. Education, brings this awareness among the learners how to connect to the community, uh, by helping them, by getting help from them, by working with them, and understanding their problems or telling your problems to your community and to the natural world around, the world, natural world that we have, that is the lot of things around us, and we are interacting as human being, and to the spiritual values. Of course, the spiritual values are different in different cultures and societies. But here we can talk about the Muslim spiritual values or ethical values that we should respect in our society. So you can see the concept of education is, is larger with these points, and creating informed, hopeful, respectful environments where learning can flourish. That means wherever is education is taking place, like school, college, or institution, or wherever. So it's creating the environment which is well informed, knows what to do. The environment itself is enriched with the required information, and it also, the environment itself, you create a kind of hope among the teachers and among the students, the learners, and the guides, and also respect where the learning can flourish, because these elements are so essential for the development and flourishment of learning. Education is changing ourselves and the world we live in. And I don't want to talk about this point too long, but you see the history of the nations, how the nations have changed. One way or the other, it was education. They changed through education. The modes have been different. We can discuss these modes, because the modes are decided by the surrounding, by the environment, by the facilities and the resources available for arranging those modes. But uh, but the principle remains, that is, we change ourselves and the world we live. That's why we see the developed nations, they have changed. If you look back to 50 years ago, they were different, and now they are, again, they are changing, and they will continue changing if they concern themselves with the education in this way. Education is a process carried out by parents, this is very important, and carers, friends, and colleagues, and specialist educators. So it's not just the teachers that are responsible for education. Education, and I would add some more elements, not parents alone. It's the parents, and if you imagine the whole process in a pie chart, you will see the parents, they have their role, the carers, they have their roles, the guardians, they have their roles, the media, it has its role in educating the people. The Although the religious institutions, they have their roles in education, your friends, peers, even the enemies, colleagues, and then the specialist educators. The role of special educators in the pie chart is, of course, is bigger than other elements, of course. Let's, after this 2 points, let's move on to the pedagogues and teachers in ancient Greek society. The idea of the writer of this article is that we should inspire, we should learn from the concept of pedagogues in the ancient Greek society, because that concept was so powerful, so effective, and so enriching and develop in the development of the personalities of the children, that we should borrow some good points from that. So he has talked too much about this. Here in this slide, you can see the origin of the word, which is not very significant for us as for the content is concerned. But the word is coming from the French, from the old French, from the Greek, and so on. It is, if my pronunciation is correct, you can see the last one. It is pedagogos in the ancient Greek language, which means slaves who took children to and from school, holding their belongings. The literal meanings of the pedagogues, or historical meanings of the pedagogues, when the word was used in those society, in the ancient Greek society, it meant this, that they were slaves who accompanied the children to the education institutions, holding their belongings, and of course they accompanied back to their home as well. But now we need to differentiate between two very important things: is pedagogues and subject teachers. Because when we, in our understanding, and I think I forgot to mention this in the beginning, I should have mentioned this. Usually, if you ask any researcher in the area of education, uh, in Pakistan especially, what is the meaning of pedagogy or pedagogue, the person who is responsible for promoting pedagogy, they would say it is just about the teaching. It is just about the teaching. And when we use the word teaching, we are talking about a person standing in the classroom, imparting the knowledge, giving the knowledge to his or her students. Now the point is here, as we have seen in the difference between schooling and education, here also we see that there is a difference, and a big difference, between subject teachers and the pedagogue, or the teachers in general and the pedagogues. Historically, as we have seen in the previous slide, you see the slaves who took children to and from school, holding their belongings. Pedagogues were slaves. This is very, very, very important point that should be kept in mind. They were spoils of war. Of course, they were, those who were captured during the wars. They were trusted members of rich families. This should be very clear. After they used to become, or they were made slaves, they were trained, or maybe they were already trained before that, but they became trusted members of only rich families, of course. you know the elite class could afford this kind of service to their wards. They accompanied the sons of their masters in the street. They always accompanied the sons at a certain age. As you can see, the last point in this slide is the 7 until the late adolescence. From this age of 7 years, they used to accompany the sons of their masters in the street. They oversaw their meals, etc. They took care of their children's meal, and they sat beside them when being schooled. Historically, this was also a tradition in the Greek society, and after that in the Roman uh, era, that the pedagogues, I mean the servants, the slave servants, who accompanied the children through the school, they used to sit with the children inside the classroom. And some of the pedagogues were also very educated, and they also helped them in their education, or in learning the subjects like writing, mathematics, poetry, etc. They were representatives of their wards fathers out of home. It's very important, because they are the heads of the families, the rich families. They gave them this authority to take care of their children out of the home, especially for their education, for their upbringing. And as I mentioned earlier, the last point is the 7 years until late adolescence, because the moment they became, adult, they didn't need pedagogues. They didn't need. And mind you, we also have, especially in the subcontinent and in the dynasty, the kings families and the elite class, we also have had this tradition known as ataliq. And the ataliq is not the teacher alone. Ataliq is the one who accompanies the children for every educational aspects. The concept that I have mentioned, or as have been mentioned earlier in the previous slides, not teaching the subjects alone, rather making a good personality for the family, for the dynasty, for the kingship, and for the society at large. Now, what were the duties of the pedagogues in Greek society? And I'm sure you can now, you can imagine, visualize the duties of the pedagogues in the light of the definition, the previous definition of pedagogues. Experienced and qualified men to serve as both leaders and custodians of children. Okay. Companionship and safety. They were also responsible for the safety of their masters, the children. They helped the children to learn, and also they were moral guides to the children. The pedagogues were responsible for every aspect of children's upbringing. Now, let me just count some. It's the learning education subjects, it's the personality traits, it's the health aspects, it is the health aspect related to sports, and the aspect related to, the ethical values or moral values that are uh, required in that society, in that elite class especially. More duties of the pedagogues. Next slide, you can see they used to teach the children and say, walk thus and so. You need to walk, and not only walk everywhere, walk among the elders. And when you are walking in the school, if you are walking in the street, if you are walking any other open place, so walk thus and so, eat thus and so. So they had set patterns in their mind, or maybe written manual as well for that, for that training purposes. This is the proper conduct for a man, and that of for a woman. Of course, there were pedagogues for girls as well, and the pedagogues for the boys. These etiquettes are needed for a married man, and that for a bachelor. So it's not related. You can see from this point, it's not related to only one thing, uh, which is uh, which is just related to education in the narrow sense of the education, and the learning subjects and courses and curriculum. Okay, they were also responsible for the education of the privileged by the oppressed. This is very important aspect. And I think if we go into the history, we find that this is not specific to the Greek society. It happened with the after that as well in the Romans, because when the Roman dominated Greece, or the Greek civilization, they took over the Greek civilization. The Romans also learned a lot from their slaves, and they were Greek, and hence we have a very good example in our Islamic history, when the Arab Muslims they conquered these areas, especially the areas where previous ancient existed, like Persia and subcontinent. So they became their teachers, although they were slaves. And the concept of muwala in Arabic, if you read in the history of the Arabs, the political history, or even in the literary history or the intellectual history of the Arabs and the Muslim Arabs, you find the concept of muwala. That is mean the maula, so and so. Mostly they were educated people, and they of course served their masters for different purposes here in the subcontinent as well, and maybe elsewhere in other civilizations, because things are usually identical in the whole world. Now let's have a table where we try to compare between pedagogues and teachers. You can see the pedagogues. Number one is they have the responsibility of moral supervision. So they are moral supervisors. Personality as a whole. The teachers, they were not moral supervisors. The pedagogues, they taught behavior along with the subjects, and it depend actually the situation was different. The pedagogues are learned people. They used to help the children in their course learning as well, but mainly their duty was to teach behavior. And the teachers, they taught only subjects: mathematics, languages, grammar, physics, chemistry, and so on. The pedagogues, they were member of household. They were members of the family. They were not. They were not detached from the family. They were considered family members to some extent, not to, of course, equally family members. Whereas the teachers in school only. The pedagogues, they focus on the life of the children, the whole life of children. The point of holistic development of the children is central in pedagogy. Was central in the pedagogy in ancient Greek society. And also the teachers, they focus on giving knowledge, as today's teaching profession is. The pedagogues, they were guide, and the teacher, they were instructor. The word instructor, is derived from to instruct, to give instruction. Do this, don't do this. Go there, don't go there. So the instruction, that is the knowledge. Fixing the knowledge in the minds of the students is the one who does this is instructor. And the pedagogues, they were responsible for education for life. It's not the education which remains in your brain or in your mind. It is the education which should be reflected in your practical life, in your practical individual life, in your practical societal life, in the wherever you are in that. Whereas the teachers only education in school or teaching in school or imparting knowledge in school. I think this slide is very important, and I would emphasize that you should think. It's not just go through. It is just that you take each point and try to think deeply, that the moral supervision, no moral supervision on the part of the teachers, and the implications or result uh, that used to come out of this literature, or even in these days, if there are ataliq, if there are pedagogues, and the results are, of course, different with the each different activity or the role. And point number 4 is the growing focus on teaching. The writer of this article has actually gone through the history, first in the European history, and then he was more concerned with the British history or North American history as far as the pedagogy is concerned. So he is just, let me just go back, because I'm missing one point. Yes, it is. Uh, how pedagogy was limited in teaching. The the thesis he is developing here in his writing, that this was the concept of pedagogy in the ancient times, right from the ancient Greek, and then coming down to the Romans and so on. But during the 16th, 17th century, as he has mentioned somewhere, the, the concept of pedagogy, was limited in the concept of teaching inside the classroom. And now he is just giving us a different information about how it happened. So literature about instruction and method aimed at school teachers, a lot of literature, writing, books and research were produced on the instruction. The focal point in these writings was on the instruction, teaching, how to impart the knowledge. And then the grouping of different areas of knowledge in syllabi, which set out what was to be instructed. The arts, the sciences, the pure sciences, the social sciences, the philosophy. This also of course opened avenues, new avenues for research, for new ideas related to instruction. Focus on the organization and development of schools, because after the European Renaissance, which although started in 13th 14th century Italy, but then it flourished afterwards in 16th 17th century. So the ideas of organization and development of the education institutions at large was very in the market, and people, of course, started working on them. the separation of the activity of teaching from the activity of defining what is to be taught. This happened throughout these centuries in Europe, especially when they separated the activity of actual teaching inside the classroom. I hope you are with me. And what is to be taught, they separated. So what is to be taught, became was carried out in a separately in another area. Those people who worked on that, and now this all was given to the teachers to teach this prepared manual, this prepared book inside the classroom, and this really led to the concept of didactics. What is didactics? Is a kind of teaching, but mostly it is based on the instruction didactics, where the steps, one, two, do this and then do this and do this. Although that doesn't mean I'm criticizing or the writer is criticizing. Actually, the writer is describing what happened in the history, which actually minimized the concept or the role of pedagogues, which was very fruitful in the ancient history, especially in the Greek. A few points about the didactics. As I said, didactics is generally is a teaching, but teach everything to everybody thoroughly in the best possible way. It's the focus is on a very ideal kind of teaching, where you try to teach everything to everybody and thoroughly, and also in the best possible way. The point here is in the didactics. The missing point is that the didactics do not consider the differences among the people, or the different abilities, or the different talents that are there with everyone, with every individual. Didactics also suggests that perfection in all that is fundamental for life. And those philosophers or those researchers who worked on didactics and created literature on didactics, they brought certain principles that every citizen should be, number one this, number two this, number three this, disregarding the as I said, the differences in the personalities. So the perfection, see the word perfection is, again, it indicates to the idea of idealism, the ideal, making the perfection in all that is fundamental for life. Didactics is also was focused, or is still focused, on sets of rules and principles for teaching, as if there is no room for creativity, no room uh, for uh, for bringing a technique which is suitable to this level of the students, or that level of the students. It's just the fixed, and theories of teaching revolving around teaching, theories of teaching revolving around only the teaching ideas, how to teach, how to impart, how to spend your time, how to do this, how to do that. And also there's another, I think this is very obvious point, and this example can be good for getting the idea of didactics. Jug and mug form of teaching. The jug here is the teacher, and the mug is here the students. So the jug, I mean the teacher, is pouring knowledge from his mind into the mugs, the brains of minds of the students. uh, just to briefly say it again, didactics focuses on instructions, under set rules and principles, and then the assessment also is done according to these principles and rules. Now, let's come to the point number 5, which is the re-emergence of pedagogy, the title given by the subtitle given by the writer here in this. And as I said, he was talking about the Europe, and but then he brought a comparison between Europe and Britain and Northern America. That was, and here we see that he has provided information, important information related to the writing on pedagogy in 1970s and early 1980s. And Paulo Ferrer, to he named his book "The Pedagogy of the Oppressed," and this pedagogy of oppressed, the idea here, the title of the book, the idea has been taken from the ancient Greek society, where the oppressed, the slaves, they actually educated the kids of their masters. The title of the book. Then Basil Bernstein on the classification and framing of the educational knowledge, and Jerome Berner's discussion of the culture of education of folk pedagogies. This Jerome Berners, the idea is that the pedagogies should be based on the culture each society. It shouldn't be independent of the culture. You can see from little, the change from the previous one, where the set principle, the set rules, and now we are talking about inclusion of the culture, considering the local culture in and in that particular in the pedagogy is related or meant for that particular society or for that particular culture, the folk pedagogies. Okay, this one slide is just the very brief of what is there about the writings on pedagogy, and then we have seen pedagogy a means of control. It says that the pedagogy was used as a means of control, especially in UK, and there was Office for Standard in Education. This is Ofsted, created for controlling the education, because the concept of pedagogy was used as a to control what is happening inside the classroom. And he is of course giving the example of Ofsted, which is the Office of for Standard in Education in UK, and still this office is working. Okay, pedagogy or didactics. The General Teaching Council for England has defined the pedagogy in these 3 points. Number one, the art of teaching means the responsive, creative, intuitive part. Art, as I said, the responsive, creative, intuitive part. The craft of teaching, skills and practice. The science of teaching, research informed decision making, and the theoretical underpinning. We see that the again the pedagogy is coming, the meaning is narrowing down and coming very near to the didactics. It's not 100% didactics here, but very near to mere teaching. Okay, now the point or the idea or the thesis that have been promoted by the writer is number 6, and this I think needs more attention from us, from you, from me, from the participants of these courses. Pedagogy as accompanying, caring for, and bringing learning to life. Apparently, we have 3 elements here in this title: is accompanying, and refer back to the ancient Greek tradition where accompanying took place, and then caring for and bringing learning to life, caring for the kids. And we will talk about the caring about as well. We differentiate between caring for and caring about, and then bringing learning to the actual life. So under this, we will talk about a focus on flourishing, which is well-being of the learners. Pedagogy. Now we are coming down to the meaning of pedagogy that should be kept in mind while we are in the area of education, while we are thinking in a course we are planning for a teaching. The well-being of learners, the point number one. Focus on flourishing of the students, flourishing of the youngsters, how people should live their lives. Another element in the pedagogy, what is the right way to act in this situation or that situation. See, the behaviors as well are included here in the pedagogy. What does happiness consist for me and for others? See, the pedagogy now is taking care of that aspect as well. How to uh, inculcate in the minds of the students that they understand what does happiness consist for them and for others. Awareness is actually related to self-awareness. How should I relate to others? Being son, how should I relate to others? Being friend, how should I relate to others? Being a member of a certain society, my culture, how should I relate to others? Being member of my religious fellows, how should I relate to others? Being member of the humanity, how should I relate to others? What sort of society should I be working for? If you just think, if you just see all these points, they revolve around one thing, which is the self-awareness and concern with the whole person. Again, we are coming back to the holistic view of the learning, of the pedagogy, which is the whole person. A person, is physically is good, is emotionally good, intellectually good, subject wise is good, and so on and so forth. So this is what we are talking about. Here we have talk about the focus on flourishing. This is the you know the focus of the pedagogy should be on flourishment of the students in totality. It's not just confined to one aspect. Okay. Accompanying, walking with them to some appointment or event. Now he is giving practical suggestions here. Walking with the students, with the learners to some appointment or event, sitting with them in meetings and sessions. Although in the classroom setting, students all usually sit with them in there, but in our classroom setting is the teacher is separately sitting in front of the student, and students are sitting in rows, and as if the teacher is again I take the analogy of the jug, and the jug is here bigger, with the knowledge filled in his or her mind, and there are a lot of mugs there in the classroom, but this is not sitting with them in, although this can be changed. And when I come for the physical face-to-face session, you must ask me this, because the people they research on that, where they very good suggestions are available for sitting with the students, going through difficulties and achievements with them. The pedagogues, the responsibility of the people who are working for the pedagogy is that they should also accompany the difficulties faced by the students, and also accompany them in their achievements. So every part of life, and they are with the students, if not physically, but they are connected to the students, one way or the other. Have to be around for people, for their students. Of course, people means for their students. So you see, in accompanying is not physical all the time here. Of course, we are living in 21st centuries. The biggest problem is time, the biggest problem and there are other, of course, facilities as well for connecting people with each other, although you are in a distanced place, but you can remain connected with whom you want. So the point is that you accompany either physically, or emotionally or intellectually, one way or the other, with the students. The huge responsibilities is there on the pedagogues here. Okay, now the person of the pedagogue. Let's talk about the person of that pedagogue. Who is that pedagogue is? Number one is they need to be experienced as people who can be trusted, respected, and I think this is there's a mistake. They, they, they need to be experienced as people who can be trusted, respected. Stop here. And the remaining take it as unnecessary addition here. And you know, you, if you see the responsibilities given to the pedagogues, according to this definition, they must be experienced as people who can be trusted, trustworthy. They must be trustworthy and they should be respected as well. They are expected to hold truth dearly. For them, they are free from the egos. If they find truth with anyone, with wherever they find, they should promote the truth. Good understanding of the subjects for which they are consulted. The pedagogues, they should be, they should have sufficient knowledge for which they have been consulted, or maybe they are teaching them the course. They should have, you know I must say the good. I cannot say the complete, because the word complete is incomplete in these days, or it actually is incomplete, because we take this word literally, and that we fall in many problems. To be approached for learning and counsel, they should be available for their students. To be approached for learning and counsel, availability. And if I relate this point to 20th, 21st century's facilities, availability, we have cell phones, we can call, we can chat, we can talk to each other. But the best way, again, coming back to this, is to have face-to-face approach for the students. And identity and integrity, these are essential elements that are required in the pedagogues. They should have a strong identity, whatever they are doing, and the integrity, that is the character. Their character should be so strong. Actually, we think that learning only takes place here in the brain. Maybe to some extent this is true, but if you don't trust the person, and if you do not have your relationship from here, from your heart, and you're not passionate toward that person, you don't feel yourself motivated towards that person, is which is pedagogue, and I'm not using the word teacher here. You cannot you cannot feel full connectedness with that person, which is very essential for effective learning. I repeat, full connectedness to the person, which is very essential for effective, lifelong, life-lasting learning, real learning. So, according to this definition, the pedagogues, they should be men of integrity and identity. Now, the point is caring for and caring about. The pedagogy, where we are now defining the pedagogy, that it is also the essential part of the pedagogy is caring for and caring about. Caring for involves face-to-face encounters in which one person attends directly to the needs of another. This is very, very, very important meaning distinction between caring for and caring about. Whereas the caring about, the example is providing the foundation for our sense of justice. Providing the foundation for our sense of, here in caring about, the pedagogue, they don't need to sit, they don't need to be available physically for their, but they are taking care of even in their absence. And whatever they think about themselves, whatever ideas they have for the betterment of their students, they for that they create a foundation for the sense of justice. Caring relations are a foundation for pedagogical activity. Impossible without the caring relations are. The pedagogues, they listen to students and gain their trust through listening. It's not that listening with full attention. They engage students in dialogue. They let their students to express their views, whatever they are, to express their questions, worries, their difficulties openly and with full trust. So they engage them. They initiate the process which give the students a confidence to express their views and take part in the intellectual dialogue as well. Also, they learn about their needs. The pedagogues, they learn about the needs of their students and their working habits, their interests and their talents. Just imagine if we have this kind of pedagogues in our society, wonders can happen, miracles can take place. You know, if the teacher, if the pedagogue, and including me, don't spare me, if the pedagogues, I should avoid the word teachers here, are like this, that they know the needs of their students, they know the working habits of their students, they know the interests of their students, they know the talents of their students. Believe me, they can create a wonderful society. Okay, caring for involves face to face. No, I think this is just the repetition. We can go next. Listen to students, gain their trust, engage students in dialogue, learn about their needs. There's again repetition. Care and education is inseparable. Education, and I add the word health as well. Uh, there are two sectors in the human society, two sectors which are totally different from other industries and other economic sectors. One is education and other is health. Care is the core element in these two sectors, in education and in health. If, as we see in our society, there are a lot of examples. I think you also have this observation in around, where you see that maybe a teacher or professor is very knowledgeable, is a great intellectual, is this, is that, is packed up with all the famous things, but he or she does not care of, for, and about his or her students. Same way the doctor, the medical doctor, maybe a specialist, maybe the award-winning achievements and so on and so forth. But the element of care is missing from his heart and mind. That person can be a famous medical doctor in a country, in the whole world, but cannot be a good healer, cannot be a good, cannot get the trust of his or her patients. So the two sectors in the human society are so important. So care and education are inseparable. You cannot detach them. You cannot separate them, because if you try to separate them, very dangerous, and it will destroy the whole process. Specialization to and socialization to and in communities. The socialization is very important. That where you, again, we earlier we have discussed this point. Socialize, that you create a religious relationship with other people in the communities. Then the formation for citizenship and democracy, this aspect of caring for or caring about. That is that if it is done effectively, the result is formation, and the formation is that you become a good member of citizen, and you also become a good proponent of democracy, because without democracy in the modern world, no development, no sustainable development can take place. Without democracy, and I repeat, and I think we can have discussion on that inside the classroom, because there are different ideas. So without democracy, no sustainable development. There can be bubbles. You can create bubbles for 5 years, for 10 years, and then everything is finished. But the sustainable development, and the tool towards the sustainable development is the modern world is citizenship and democracy. Without that, impossible. Learning, development of individual skills, of course, is always there. So caring for and caring about. Now the last point under this is bringing learning to life. And here we have three things: pedagogy as animation, pedagogy as reflection, and pedagogy as action. What does this mean, animation? Pedagogy as animation means bringing life into situations, creating those situations where the students are put. This is often achieved through offering new experiences. Go there, do that. Go to library, do this. Go to lab, do this. And they pass through that particular experience, and when they pass through that particular experience, uh, they learned they feel the experience itself, and then of course they also have their own uh, learning. Pedagogy as a reflection, that creating moments and spaces to explore lived experience, the past experiences, and the moment and spaces to explore the lived. You can say the case studies where they can reflect what happened in their own maybe experiences, or what happened in the experiences of the others. So they reflect, they rethink that, they ponder on what happened, and through that they bring learning into life. There is another third technique for is action. Of course, action speaks louder than the word. So action is working with people so that they are able to make changes in their life. Action, of course, when we implement these three things, they are different for different areas, for different field. If we take the example of translation and interpretation, we have the animation examples where the actual interpreting situations are created and students are put. And reflection part is their own past experiences in a particular situations related to translation and interpretation, and they can reflect, and they can deduct their own results, or they are provided with the lived experiences, and they are asked to reflect on these lived experiences. And actions, they are asked to do something, and when they do, they are also told that now you need to bring certain changes in through that. That's it. Now we can come to the concluding remarks. This is point number 7 is the and in the point number 7 there are three things: that is pedagogy tied to age, certain age, kids age, certain age 10, age 18, age, and in university level only schools, which school is primary school, middle school, higher secondary school, and so on in the university as well. Can the notion of pedagogy be unhooked from the discourse of schooling and return to something more like its Greek region? Where are we to stand in the debate around whether it is an art, science, or craft? The pedagogy tied to age is mostly, of course, they are talking about the kids, certain age, before the age of 18, for example. But there are researchers, and they say that although the pedagogy of the kid is essentially different from the pedagogy of the adults, but the pedagogy as such is not tied to a certain age. Of course, there are pedagogies. Pedagogy for for the kids. Certain, the level of education in the pre-primary, then primary, and then middle, and then secondary, and then higher secondary, and then university, undergrads, universities, researchers, PhDs, and so on. So the pedagogy, in a nutshell, is not tied to age, although historically developed developed for the children. As can we say, in the ancient Greek societies, there were pedagogues or pedagogos, those who used to serve the children of their masters in different situations, especially in an education institution. The second point is, can the notion of pedagogy be unhooked from the discourse of schooling and return to something more like its Greek origins? I think there is a hope and one effort. There are people are working. I personally know many Scandinavian countries, especially the Finland, is leading this direction. They are bringing this concept back to their education systems. Of course, not the same concept. Of course, they are not using slaves for the upbringing of their kids, but the concept is same, but it is used in the modern world in the 21st centuries when the inspiration has been taken and they are really delivering great results. The Finnish model of schooling, especially till the uh, 10 years schooling, they have created, they are considered number one in the whole world because they have created a model based on this holistic approach of pedagogy where everything is taken care of an individual, everything of an individual, everything of the personality is taken care of in their education or education process. So where we to stand in the debate around whether it is a science or I think my suggestion is in a very brief way is that in the pedagogical processes, if you are a pedagogue, a talib, if you are a teacher in the sense that we are taking now, uh, it is art, it is science, it is craft, and it is more than that. And if you have any, if I'm sure you would have some questions because the writer is writing too much on that. You can discuss these questions with me in a decided session. So now let's move on to the last point. What do we mean by pedagogy? I don't want to say lot theoretical things here, but I want to come to the conclusion directly. What do we mean by pedagogy? We can we can put these four phases. There are bigger phases to understand the meaning of pedagogy for us. Mind you, we are talking about the translation and interpretation. So, major phases of pedagogy is curriculum development. Number two is teaching methods. Number three is the assessment techniques, and number four is evaluation. Uh, Although we shall be talking about these topics in detail in subsequent lectures, but I want to say a few words about the curriculum development. The curriculum development means that if we want to teach a course, let's suppose a course of basic translation course from Arabic into English, we should have certain elements, decided elements in that course outline. We can call this a curriculum very briefly. The teaching method, now this particular course, how it should be taught inside the classroom or outside the classroom, because to our education, to our understanding of translation interpretation, it can take place inside the classroom and it should take place outside the classroom within that curriculum. So what teaching method, and when that particular teaching method is suitable for that particular course. Assessment techniques means how the learning should be assessed. Usually we say examinations, but the idea of assessment is much larger than the examination, although it includes examination into it also. Evaluation means we have prepared a curriculum. We have also found good teaching technique for teaching that particular curriculum. We also know how to assess what we did in the previous phases, assess and examine. But we also need to come back to the phase number one, evaluate what we did, the whole process. We should evaluate the whole process once again. So you can say it's like a circle which continues, never ending. So after curriculum development, teaching method, assessment techniques, we start evaluation what we did, and in the light of the evaluation we bring changes in the curriculum development, teaching methods and assessment techniques. And when we finish this when we complete this cycle, we come back to evaluate retrospective manner. We try to evaluate what we did, and in the light of the results taken from the evaluation, we start our process once again. I hope this description will work for the time being, and more will come on these. I'm not giving you in the previous slides. I had included, I think, 5 definition of pedagogy from this philosophers. And as you know, my students know very well that I'm, I'm sick of defining something in terms of lines, paragraph, and then trying to, grasp that and try to understand that thing through that definition. So if we want to create our own definition, we should have these 4 basic phases in mind, and then my definition, the phrases of my definition would be different. Your would be, the number 2 would be different, number 3 would be different, because we are different people. So it's not that we should memorize one definition and we think we have achieved something. So there we are now coming to the point where, the subject based pedagogies is social sciences, because everything is different. Social sciences are different, humanities are different, natural sciences are different. Now the translation and interpretation. We are talking about the pedagogies for translation and interpretation. So let me say a few words in the light of what we have talked about 4 phases: curriculum development, teaching methods, assessment techniques, and evaluation. We should not forget the element of pedagogy that existed in the ancient Greek societies. This is the holistic view of the personal development, which is the taking care of our student as a translator and as an interpreter, and the difficulties that student faces and the solutions of the difficulties, availability of the teachers for taking care or at least giving guidance towards the solutions for these difficulties and these problems, and also having a close association with our students. I think you people, perhaps, or at least some of you know very well that I always talk about this, the association, the relationship between the department and the students, which is basically the relationship between the teachers and the students. On the other side, we believe, and I personally believe, in the long, good relationship between the teachers and the students based on the qualities that have been discussed, or that are part of the pedagogy in the ancient Greek societies. Minus one element: they were slaves. We are not. We are all free people, independent people. But you know the idea here is that we promote this concept of pedagogy. And that's why my focus is on that. Although you see four elements here, but they are not four. Because when we talk about, you will feel that the heart is there in the curriculum development, and the heart is there in the teaching methodology, and the heart is there also in the teaching assessment. I mean, that part of the human part of care part of the pedagogy is persistent in all these four phases. Thank you very much, my dear students, for being attentive, and I'm sure you are attentive. And before I finish, I would remind you one thing which I ask you to do: send me your emails so that I send you material, especially the PPTs. I could not send PPT number one in this course and in the other course as well. So send me your emails to the mail that I have provided you in the first lecture. This is number one. Number two is your next advanced reading assignment is the next article. The title of the article is Rethinking Translation in the 21st Century. I repeat, your next advanced reading assignment in this course is the next article. The title of the article is Rethinking Translation in the 21st Century. Has a Have a good time, has a good week ahead. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.